Finish him, Max Verstappen. Leave no crumbs. Have no mercy for Mohammed. Sulayem, I have had enough. I was cheering and hooting and jumping out of my seat when I saw Max Verstappen today responding at the FIA, the official FIA drivers press conference, as we suggested he should have yesterday. Marshawn Lynch settings. I've only attended this press conference so I don't get fined even, and he was near as makes no difference, verbatim, on the money. Here's what Max Verstappen had to say to all of the questions that the journos pitched at him during the official FIA press conference. No comment. We can talk about this outside, maybe. I don't want to talk about this because I'm fear that I'm going to get fined and bloody community service yet again, and I'm here for it. Who do they think they are dealing with? Yes, I want them to institute their rules consistently across the piece, across all related parties. Of course I do. But when I say that, I'm talking about the stuff that's going on track. Not all of it, of this other buffoonery, this nonsense. Mohammed Sulayem kikiing and doing his best shuck and jive in front of the cameras as if he somehow is affiliated and responsible for the drivers on the podium. Behave yourself, Mohammed Sulayem. This has gone too far now, and I'm glad that Max Verstappen, alongside Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton, 7-time champion, and Lando Norris, are taking a stand. You cannot fudge with the drivers. Why? Because they are the assets, Mohammed Sulayem, not you. You are the FIA. You are the procurer of a regulatory service, even to the one that F's. One, by the way, that you've not been providing very well for as long as I can remember. Why don't we fight those fires, therefore, instead of tinkering with this minutiae, talking back and forth about bad language? Alan Iverson settings. What are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? Expletives. Practice. What are we talking about here? Is there not real F1 to solve for? Can't even tell whether there's been a full start because your transponders are broken half the bloody time. You can't even tell what a qualifying lap is from a track infringement, lest we forget a couple races ago when you put Lando on pole, then you struck off the lap time. Lewis therefore was on pole, only to then go and reinstate Lando Norris's laps, while F1 fans around the world are doing one of these. I don't know who put it on pole. I don't know. Was it Lewis? Was it Lando? These are the things that matter most, not this expletive rubbish that we keep talking about, that we are busying ourselves with, that you are disenchanting 3 soon-to-be 4-time champion, one Maximilian Verstappen with. Those are the things that you're choosing. That's the hill, Mohammed Sulayem, FIA, regulatory body, subject, of course, to a cheeky bit of regulatory capture. That's the hill that we want to die. I just don't get this. Hence why I'm so glad, enthused, proud of Maximilian Verstappen for taking a stand. No, I'm not doing no community service. What are you talking about? Community service. And Maximilian Verstappen, in his tirade, said this. I'm not even mad at the stewards, but the rules are a nonsense. We've read through them before and we can see that they're written as if they were penned by a 5-year-old. No terms and conditions. No introduction, no nothing that makes them cohesive. They are indeed a nonsense. And Max Verstappen is not having it. And I'm here for it. War Max Verstappen. Max said, you know what, this isn't anything against you, Tom Clarkson. This is against the FIA. If you've got questions to ask me, Maximilian Verstappen said, then ask me outside. And that led to chaos, did it not? Do you not remember? Let me show you what the chaos that I'm talking about is. This is the chaos that I'm talking about, as these journos scrambled around Maximilian Verstappen with a view to get a cheeky soundbite. Maximilian Verstappen held his own press conference, and I am here for it. Take the power out of the FIA's hands. What are we doing? Nonsense Formula One, robust controls, there to institute the rules and regulations around some proper stuff that matters, racing, and all we hear them talking about at the moment, as at September 2024, is expletives and colourful language, as if that matters. What are we doing here? I am done with these guys. Let's get into the minutiae of what Maximilian Verstappen had to say, because it's techie me, Bashir. It's pandering to the drive to survive, isn't it? This is F1, not Care Bears. think someone forgot to give the memo to MBS. You're not wrong there, sir. The driver should perform with Eminem at Austin songs with swear words, mate. But they've got to. You just can't police grown people, you know. Listen, visual. To that point, I don't like. You're never gonna hear me on a stream like just rifling off the expletives. That's not in my nature. That's not the way that my mum raised me. Do you know what I mean? But that's not me to turn my. Far for it to be me to turn my nose up at anybody who does use that language and proselytize them and encourage them not to. You know what I mean? It's just nonsense. Absolutely ridiculous. Go on then, let's hear what was said. Luke Smith, Verstappen asked by the host, Tom Clarkson, in the FIA press conference, how much has changed on the car overnight? And of course, this is talking to free practice. This is talking to the lateral stiffness and vertical stiffness of the suspension that they've tweaked with a view to gain lap time around Singapore. Last year, it wasn't fantastic. They struggled around here because of the resurfaced track surface, and because of the contours that so characterise the Singapore Grand Prix track. To that, Maximilian responded with 2 words. How much have you changed it? A lot. Asked as a follow-up question by Tom Clarkson, can you elaborate, Max? No, because I might get fined an extra day of community service. Thereafter, he continues with the short answers. Mate, I don't hate this. Make it feel awkward. Do you know what I mean? Make it feel awkward, Max. Show and prove that you disapprove of this nonsense that the FIA is instituting by way of things that, in all honesty and truth, do not matter a fudge. Quite another question for Maximilian Verstappen. How long do you anticipate, said one journo, that you won't be giving answers in the FIA press conference specifically? Because remember, this is a very different circumstance to the embargo that Christian Horner and Max Verstappen imposed on Sky Sports F1 when Ted Kravitz had some very disparaging, some will say some very fair, some will say things to say about Abu Dhabi 21 and the way that all went down. Maximilian Verstappen was tired of that Abu Dhabi 21 narrative. So too Christian Horner, and they said, we're just not going to speak to Sky Sports F1. This is something very different though. This is rage against the machine, the FIA, the regulatory body of Formula One, because that's all that Max Verstappen isn't going to talk to. He doesn't want to talk to the press in the confines of the FIA press conference. That's why he's prepared to go outside and have his own one there, just showing who truly has the power in this automotive pugilism equation. He has a name. It's not the FIA, it's Maximilian Verstappen, it's the drivers, it's Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton, it's Lando Norris. This sport is nothing without them, and Mohammed Ben Sulayem needs to realise this. The FIA need to realise this and take 2 seats. Max responds, how long do you anticipate not responding to questions during the FIA press conference? Max responds, I'm answering, just not a lot. Problem with my voice. Let's go. There's, of course, more than likely no problem whatsoever with Maximilian Verstappen's voice. He's just saying that in a way that they can't usurp or challenge him. Health settings, and I love that. Luke Smith tweeted that Maximilian Verstappen made good on his promise to talk to us outside of the room. Big group of us followed him down the stairs, the paddock building, and through the paddock on his way down to the TV pen. And by the way, an FIA steward said, you know what, you can't do this. You can't do this. You just had the opportunity to talk to the world's media and press at the official FIA press conference. You can't do this here, the FIA steward said, to which Maximilian Verstappen said, all right then, cool. Let's walk and talk. And the world's press and media, keen to hear from the 3 soon-to-be 4-time champion, followed Maximilian Verstappen and pitched their questions at him, therefore, in transit. Let's go. I love this. MBS needs to step down. See, they won't get rid of him though, Seven Rivers. This is the problem. Why? Because the optics are too bad. Everything looks in disarray if they oust Mohammed Ben Sulayem before his tenure's up. His tenure, by the way, will come to an end in December of 2025. I have a bottle of champers in the fridge on ice ready to go for that day when he gets ousted and they put another Jean Todt in there, somebody proper who knows something about robust regulatory controls and how to institute them in a way that's consistent and fair, in a way that's transparent, true and representative across all related parties. What are we doing? Toby Gruner talks about the topic of foul language that was discussed in yesterday's drivers' briefing. That we hear, apparently, if word on the F1 curb is anything that you're to be invested in, we hear that the drivers promised to be more careful during the drivers' press conference, but they did not agree to watch their language during the radio conversations when they were out on track. Max Verstappen indeed spoke to this. Max said, we had a really good conversation with the stewards even. So I don't understand why then they meted out this noddy penalty community service as if I am a criminal. Therefore, this is what Maximilian Verstappen will be thinking about. And then, by the way, it wasn't even as if it were just Maximilian Verstappen. This was proper rage against the machine. This was the rise of the drivers, if Transformers is a thing, because Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris were singing both on the same hymn sheet. This was something of a kumbaya for the drivers, normally at loggerheads and friction settings. And again, I get this gesture from Nico Rosberg, who was reacting to Maximilian Verstappen's performance at the FIA drivers' press conference in real time. And I'm here for it, ladies and gentlemen. Here's what they pitched to Lando Norris. What do you think about Max being given community service? Lando quipped, tongue very firmly in cheek in the first instance. You know what? I think Max deserves it. To raptures of laughter from the F1 press and media. Why? Because the FIA, in the way that they're handling this, are being viewed as a joke. It is a joke, a running joke in the paddock, a running joke amongst the drivers, a running joke now amongst the world's press and accredited media. What are we doing? He then continues thereafter to say verbatim, I think it's pretty unfair. Lewis responds thus, it's a bit of a joke, isn't it? Mistakes are made, things are said. And again, this is not long after Lewis talking about there is a way that champions behave. Now doing a U-turn and realising, as far as Max Verstappen, that the enemy of my enemy is indeed my friend. Lewis continued, it's a bit of a joke, mistakes are made. I don't think Max should do that community service. What do they do? Who do they think they are? Community service. What? Maximilian Verstappen's getting 50 million. Look, I know the rules are the rules and the rules should be instituted properly, fairly. And this is what the stewards are doing. But listen, if the rules are so bloody draconian to where you're going to disenchant Maximilian Verstappen, 3 soon to be 4-time champion, then you might want to go and have a look at them between seasons, eh? You might want to rewrite a couple of lines. Do you know what I mean? If you're suffocating Max Verstappen, one of your key assets, if indeed stakeholder management is a thing that they hold there, as they should, the FIA, because they need to keep, as Charlie Whiting used to back in the day, they need to manage their relationships with the drivers in real time, have these conversations, broadcast them, therefore, if indeed you're an organisation that considers itself to be open and honest, transparent. Why is Lewis talking like that? Well, only the other day he was fined $50,000 for crossing the track right at Qatar after crashing into his teammate King George Russell, first of his name. Now Carlos Sainz, as at today, the 21st of the 9th, 2024, he did exactly the same thing, crossed the track. And if consistency is a thing, which is what we're all concerned about as an F1 community, that the rules are instituted in a way that's true and fair and representative, consistent across all related parties, drivers, engineers, team principals, et al. If that's a thing, then surely you would expect that Carlos Sainz, for crossing the track, the exact same infringement that Sir Lewis Hamilton did at Qatar 2023, that he should get the same penalty now. $50,000, if memory serves, for Lewis Hamilton. What did Carlos Sainz get? I ask you, non-rhetorical question. 25. You remember at the time when they gave Lewis the 50, that the question was asked, why did he get 50? That feels like it's extortion. That feels like the crime doesn't meet the extent of the punishment? Why did you give Lewis Hamilton $50,000 fine for just crossing the track? To which the FIA responded, listen, he's the biggest superstar, he's a mainstream crossover, ergo a role model, and he needs to take these things, therefore, in brackets, more seriously than most, and so we will punish him more than we would somebody else. And then in the next breath, the FIA are going to fine $25,000 to one Carlos Sainz for doing the same thing, and call consistency and transparency and honesty behaviour. So we can't, honestly, Attic, you can't take these things seriously, you know. FIA needs the drivers don't need the FIA. Who will miss MBS? No one, absolutely. And the next bod that comes in needs to ring out the changes. You know, all these intellectual property, fundamental key personnel who've walked out the door because they don't want to tolerate the incompetence, the nonsense, the hypocrisy of the leadership that's so characterised by Mohammed Ben Sulayem and his shenanigans. He's unwilling to listen to people who want him to wind his neck back in. He's unwilling to walk back, saying things about the commercial aspect of the sport that absolutely don't concern him, that are outside of his remit, saying that the asset value of F1 among conversations to take over from Liberty Media is too high. That's sabotage. That's tantamount to sabotage. Liberty Media's shareholders were none too happy about that, as they shouldn't, that a related party, a customer even of the commercial rights holder, are indeed trying to downsell their value to the market. What? Nah. Behave yourself, Mohammed Ben Sulayem. This is only the latest in a long line, a litany even of nonsense that has come out of this chap's mouth. 25 for Carlos Sainz for crossing the track, but 50 for Lewis Hamilton. Why? Because Lewis is a role model. What are we doing, Attic? Honestly, Attic, this makes no sense. I have had enough. I've had enough. The drivers have now had enough. Lewis Hamilton, even as PR-centric as Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton is, 7-time champion, man whose face will absolutely be a first-round draft if we're talking about the Mount Rushmore of F1. Even Lewis has had enough. Listen, people say certain things, but it is a bit of a joke. Lewis says, I wouldn't be doing that community service meted out to me and Maximilian Verstappen in this instance by virtue of an F-bomb. I wouldn't be doing that, says Lewis. And neither should Max. I hope Max isn't going to do it. Oh, the humanity. It's gone chaos. Full chaos settings. Oh, and by the way, props to Max Verstappen. I'm glad that he went full Marshawn Lynch on these numpties over at the regulatory body, because it's not good enough. It's not good enough. They need to understand and get their priorities in order, lest they want more key personnel that they've only just hired to walk out the door, lest they want to continue making these mistakes, lest it be an Austria of 2023 when they had about 1,600 track infringements to investigate after the race, leaving the world's F1 population and viewership uncertain as to the ultimate outcome of the race. This is nonsense. These are the bigger fires. The F1, the regulatory body, the commercial rights holder too, are responsible for and need to be focusing on. Not this noddy stuff, minutia, that ultimately fades to black, is lost or should be lost in the roundings. Were they headed up by a motivational, pioneering, innovative leader that cared about the first order priorities, like let's say a Jean Todt, or like let's say a Ross Brawn sometimes. Get one of those guys back in here, lest you want to destroy and further bring into disrepute the sport that so many hundreds of millions of people around the world know and love and tune into every single race weekend. Oh, and by the way, there is other news, because Christian Horner gave a telling interview to Sky Sports F1 where he talked about Danny Ric, whether this was, he was asked the question outright, upfront and explicit, is this going to be Danny Ricciardo's last race weekend? Lest we forget, failed to get out of Q1 again, roundly outperformed by Yuki Tsunoda. And this, for context and table setting, has been the problem of Danny Ric, the honey badger. And I love that guy, I'll be honest with you. I really, really like Danny Ric the person, but Danny Ric the F1 driver, we haven't seen him for ages. Since that chap left Red Bull Racing, the last of the late breakers, the gung-ho, the Braveheart F1 peddler, he's gone away. We haven't seen him again since. Not at McLaren, not at Renault, not anywhere, definitely not at RB Visa Cash Up. Do you think Yuki Tsunoda could roundly trounce both head-to-head in the race and head-to-head in qualifying Danny Rick as we knew him, the same Danny Rick that turned over Sebastian Vettel, back-to-back champion 4 times? You're having a laugh. Absolutely not. Vettel was the heir apparent, the Red Baron. He was the next Michael Schumacher. So that Danny Rick just came into that Red Bull Racing team and made it his own. That Danny Rick would be going great guns now, but sometimes the oldest adage, no story in F1 history, is that sometimes it just goes right. Whatever it is that drives you on, whatever that is internally, as far as these F1 drivers, these wielders of these chariots, sometimes it just disappears and there's no amount of gym or introspection or meditation that can get it back. And sadly, that's where Danny Rick is, as at the 21st of the 9th, 2024. And Christian Horner speaks to this. He said, after Singapore, between now and Kota, we've got some introspection of our own to be doing. It was always going to be the way. Over summer break, we were going to take a look at our options even, and our material underperformers, being, of course, Checo Perez and Danny Rick. And it was always going to be the way again after Singapore and before Kota. You've got that period, Helmut Marko insinuation. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner will be sat down discussing their options. Christian Horner has near as said explicitly that Danny Rick, listen, they've got a problem right there. As far as their SWOT analysis, their risk is that Liam Lawson will go elsewhere and they won't be able to keep him in the family. Why? Because he's got a clause in the contract, I want to say it's September the 12th, that if they haven't promised him a drive by that time, then he can bounce. And he will bounce because he will be sought after, just like Maximilian Verstappen. If they don't give him a car and don't keep the harmony at the team, he will bounce. Whether it's Mercedes or Ferrari, he'll have options, or even McLaren, of course he'll have options. So Christian Horner is saying, therefore, with a view to keep Liam Lawson in the team, they'll have to replace one Danny Rick with Liam Lawson. And again, expect for that dude's first race to be at Kota. They can't afford to mess around now. All of the politicking and nonsense from Red Bull Racing, the house that Christian Horner built, that's gone now. Now they're second in the Constructors' Championship. They can't afford to play around. No points in that no point in the championships, both drivers and constructors, can be left unturned. They've got to nail it now, if indeed they harbour aspirations of winning even one of them. That's why Liam Lawson is going to come into this team, and that's why Liam Lawson will be pushing to supersede one Checo Perez in that Red Bull Racing team. Why? Because Checo Perez is still materially underperforming. Didn't even make it through to Q3 today. Where was he? P13. What's that? Checo, and of course, listen, table setting is this shout out to Checo Perez's father, who had a heart attack on the back of the incident last race weekend. And we don't mess about with health. Banter to the side. However, it's really important that we say this predates any health issues that Checo Perez's dad has recently undergone. This dude has been crashing and failing to get out of Q1 and Q2 for the longest time all season. And because of that, Red Bull's issues in the Constructors' Championship, now flailing in second place to McLaren, the papaya-coloured team, those issues are indeed a function of the not insubstantial travails of one Checo Perez, the man formerly known as the Mexican Minister of Defense. Oh, and by the way, reversing back to Danny Rick, Christian Horner was in truth-saying mode. He spoke about Danny Rick, that the reason why we brought Danny Rick in was to have him outperform in the junior team with a view to state his case, make his case plain and simple, beyond reasonable doubt, for a place in the senior team to supersede Checo Perez on the back of his qualifying lap that wasn't a million miles away from Max Verstappen's pole lap that year at Silverstone. They thought that they could potentially promote him if indeed two things happened. Checo Perez continued to underperform and Danny Rick continued to show that blistering pace that was only a stone throw away from Maximilian Verstappen. The first happened, Checo Perez has materially underperformed ever since then, and nobody is going to tell me any different. The second, however, failed to transpire because Danny Ric has been roundly outperformed by Yuki Tsunoda. Christian Horner's words, by the way, are not mine. That poses them a problem. Risk to reward settings for Red Bull now. If you have Danny Ric and you've given him ample time to show and prove, and he has not. And then on the other side, you have Liam Lawson ready to be subbed in. Gets techie. Liam almost makes your decision for you. Oh, and by the way, if we're going to get even more truth, say Christian Horner doubles down on Liam Lawson. He talks about all these other young drivers that are currently in the pool, Isaac Hadjar et al. These guys are coming up, right? The Red Bull Junior program is full of killers. Here's what he says about Liam Lawson. The idea for Liam, hopefully he'll be as good as the rest around him. See a George Russell as an example. See a Colapinto. See a Kimi Antonelli and a Jack Doohan. These guys, Ollie Behrman, even Christian Horner cites. Hopefully, he says Liam Lawson will come into that car and be as good as all of the aforementioned. But the truth is, Christian Horner says, and I quote, "We don't know. We don't know whether Liam Lawson will be as good as any of those, and we need to put him in the car as at Kota to proof that thesis." This is techie, right? Do you hear the negative tone in Christian Horner expressing somehow Freudian slip settings, but expressing at the very least a slither of doubt around Liam Lawson's upside potential? And that's chaos already. Already Liam Lawson goes into the car, that the RB Visa Cash App car, alongside Yuki Tsunoda, who hasn't been bad, who isn't a bad peddler, with this negative cloud around him by virtue of Christian Horner, his team principal, his ultimate team principal's comments. Oh, the humanity, ladies and gentlemen. Honestly, it gets techier and techier. So you want to be a racing driver? So you want to drive in Formula One? Well, then you've got all this pressure to deal with. One says Max will be in 2025 doing other things, I'm afraid, or Merck can get it done. Bloody Nora on rail. Potentially. I don't believe you have a low IQ. Just a bit more trust in yourself. Seize the day, my friend. Let's go, Dan. Horner also said that, right, yes. Yeah, I'm coming to it, Ron. Horner, right, so here's what it is. This is chaos. Look, talking about the pool of drivers available to him, here's what Christian Horner had to say, that they need to start making some decisions forthwith. Why? Because the pool of young hot prospects in Formula One who are available to drive and would kill at the sniff, kill to get an opportunity, a cheeky drive in a Red Bull racing car, whether that's the parent or the child member team, Red Bull Racing or RB Visa Cash App. Listen, he's got to make some decisions, right? You can't have Checo Perez just hanging around like a bad smell for the rest of his life. So too, the same bloody thing, apply the same thesis to Danny Ric, because there are a gazillion. In fact, like Simon on the Sky F1 internationally syndicated broadcast asked the question this way. You've got all the, it might have been Brundle to be fair. You've got all these drivers. You've had all these junior drivers. You've had Gasly. You've had Alex Albon. You've had all these drivers come and go. Some brilliant drivers who have gone on to do bits with other teams. You've had them come and go. How do you ensure that that doesn't happen again? And it's Brundle that asked the question. Catch this guy. You need to go and watch this. Again, it's post-qualified. Brundle levels the question this way, and this is the killer one. He says, how do you make sure, A, that you don't lose more hot prospect talents like that? And here's the killer, ladies and gents. And here's where we're about to get super techie. Watch this. Brundle says, how do you, as at the 21st of the 9th, 2024, how do you now have the weakest driver pairing on the grid in Maximilian Verstappen and Checo Perez? Oh, the humanity, ladies and gents. Did that really come out of Martin Brundle's mouth? But you know what? It is true. As brilliant as Maximilian Verstappen is, your team is only as good as its weakest link. And Checo Perez has been weak. This isn't me saying that Checo Perez once upon a time wasn't God tier. See Turkey 2021. Please see Abu Dhabi 2021. The geezer was instrumental in deciding which way the silverware went. He was once upon a time brilliant, winning races from the back of the grid. You know what I mean? He was God tier. But listen, in F1, the oldest truism that you can pin your tail to is that all that matters is what have you done for me lately. Shout out to Janet Jackson. Matthew, you're a legend. Max is basically dragging this utter POS of an RB20 around Singapore. I'm still back in 2025 when Mercedes will bag and sit Max in the Mercedes. Those conversations, are happening. I have it on good authority. And you only need to look into the different periodicals who are all talking about this, by the way. If you say all journalistic integrity is made equally, but some journalists have their integrity more equal than others. You only need to go and check out Andrew Benson of the BBC. He's talking about this. Why? Maximilian Verstappen to Mercedes potentially. Why? Because Toto won't stop talking about it either. And in that vein, Christian Horner said we need to make some decisions. We do need to make some decisions. He didn't even push back. I was expecting Christian Horner to push back on Martin Brundle's signifier, the way that he characterises their driver pairing as one of the weakest, if not the weakest on the grid. Ordinarily, Christian Horner in his pomp with chest out peacocking would have pushed back, right? I said, what are you talking about? Push back on Nico Rosberg when he had some things to say earlier on in the same interview. Why not with Martin? Because he accepts the truth. The first step to salvation is honesty about your circumstance where you are, and Christian Horner is there now. These are like the stages of grief. He knows that the driver pairing, both RB Visa Cash App and Red Bull Racing, needs some fixing, and so he will fix it, therefore potentially looking to do something with Checo as well as Danny Rick. And again, as far as Checo, here's what he had to say, and this is where it gets techie, ladies and gents, because I've never heard him talk like this. He says there's some serious drivers about Christian Horner talking now. He goes, look, George Russell is out of contract next year. You hear this chat? Seven Rivers broke 500. Yeah, Seven Rivers were going for it. George Russell, Christian Horner says, is out of contract next year. Are you meaning, therefore, Christian, with a view to replace Checo Perez alongside Maximilian Verstappen, depending on what happens there, you're looking to sign one George Russell? That you're aware of it makes me know Christian Horner has been thinking about it, therefore signing one George Russell. And nobody's not going to tell me that George Russell won't be thinking about that too. Why? Because his team principal always talks about two drivers. One's first name is Max, the other's first name is Kimi. Very rarely do I hear that fella mention King George Russell first of his name. And George, being a god-tier level racing mind with all of his race savvy and strategic nous, will be critically aware of this going forward, therefore, and will be moving accordingly. Nobody's going to catch George Russell short. What do you mean? You think he's going to be left holding the F1 baby as if he didn't already spend at least two too many years at Williams wasting his not insubstantial potential? Are you having a laugh? Do you know who George Russell is? Have you seen him overtake Aitken? The ruthlessness that this dude embodies. Behave yourself. No chance. If Colapinto has proved anything, that Liam and Max will be a fire duo, but it ain't happening. George and Max, maybe. And who knows, maybe George, this is all speculation and conjecture, eh? It's going to get techie. Russell to Red Bull. Mark, I'm telling you, go back and watch the interview. I couldn't believe that the words George and Russell even came out of Christian Horner's mouth. He's never, ever in life, season to date, or Red Bull tenure to date, he's never, ever mentioned George Russell, but now he's considering it in real time. So detrimental has their driver performance been. Of course, in the hands of Danny Rick, who is Gonzo Sekaba. Sadly for Danny Rick, because I like the guy. I enjoy the Honey Badger. Even today, after the disappointment of going out in Q1, the death knell potentially of his F1 career, still a smile on that chap's face. And I feel like the paddock, the press pen, the drivers' press conferences will all be poorer for his absence. I'll be honest, but on track, again, like I said originally, the Danny Rick, the racer Danny Rick, the guy that so soundly beat Sebastian Vettel, 4-time champion, back-to-back settings, that guy's been gone from F1 for a while. We haven't seen him. Last of the late breaker, Daniel. The dude that pulled off manoeuvres like Jack Piastri did on Charles Leclerc last race at Baku. You haven't seen that dude for ages. This Danny Rick chap is a pale shadow of that peak prime Danny Rick chap, but it happens sometimes. in Formula One, doesn't it? Should we look at tomorrow? It's going to get techie for Lando Norris. I'm rooting for Lando. I've taken off my Oscar Jack Piastri hat and put very firmly on my Lando Norris hat. Why? You're a flip-flopper, Cameron, they say. Why? Well, because I am invested in competition. Again, it's fantastic we have competition for each and every single race. But under the guise of competition for the Drivers' Championship, mate, everybody's a winner. This is the perfect equation. Fermat's last theorem. Do you know what I mean? This is perfect. And so I'm keen for Lando as the candidate most likely to take it to one Maximilian Verstappen. Keen for Lando to optimise for his chances. I like seeing the video footage or the pictorial even of Lando dissecting, getting deep into the technical information. That's what he needs to do. Why? Because the gap between talent, and Lando is talented for the avoidance of doubt, and execution, as per my guy Martin of Lower Lap Time, is preparation. He needs to get into the weeds of it, outwork the rest, because his talent can only get himself so far. Let's say he has another mistake, drops it off the line, fails to launch it properly, or there's a software glitch going from gear 1 to gear 2. What then, Lando? Do you have the mental fortitude and race savvy to work your way out of this not insubstantial automotive pugilism equation in real time? Do you, Lando? That's always been the question, because nobody can say that dude's not fast enough. Did you see him today in qualifying? Just knocking out the purple sectors for fun, just for the sake almost. Nobody could get near. Yeah, he has the fastest car, but he's still absolutely rapid. People have been saying for years that this dude was always going to go gangbusters. That's why Red Bull have been trying to sign him all his life, pretty much. I say that to say I'm wishing that Lando, I'm hoping that Lando, nothing will make me more happy as a neutral in this equation without a dog in this fight. If Lando makes it off the line and gets to complete a lap, break the curse I want to say he's done 6 poles, and each of those 6 poles, none of them as he got to the end of the last lap in the lead. Desperately, Lando Norris needs to break that curse for him, for his confidence, for his mental fortitude, to reinforce that positivity loop. That self-perpetuation. Tyson, you're an absolute legend. Different gravy as far as your generosity, sir. Thank you so much. But I'm desperate for... And again, this is all under the umbrella of the competitive landscape. Maximilian Verstappen as the Joker needs a Batman. And I'm hoping that Lando Norris can rise from the flames like a phoenix and be the Batman to a Maximilian Verstappen's Joker, at least for the 2024 season and potentially thereafter. And in order to fulfill that, to do that, he needs to understand the gap analysis. And again, I'm going to cite Martin of Lower Lap Time. There is a gap between talent and execution. The fulfillment of that talent is a function of preparation. Lando needs to be that. He needs to do that. He needs to get out of his own head. Stop being so negative. And again, on the back of the pictures that I saw where he's deep diving the data, post qualifying, he goes into his negativity bag again. A brilliant lap, probably not perfect. Lando Norris had done quicker sector 2 even. A 26.493 he'd done in Q2 for Gusto on an in lap. Do you know what I mean? So his lap that ultimately ended him up a pole for the avoidance of doubt. No one's going to argue that was his fastest and best. But rejoice, therefore, in that Lando. You know what I mean? Even though it wasn't your best, it was still good enough to get you on pole with lap time in hand. That is a positive news story there for Lando. Get some shut eye, mate, and come back serious. Be positive about your prospects of winning this race, lest you wish to lean into a negative self-fulfilling cycle. And again, it worries me that Lando Norris only chose in the post-quali press conference, he chose to focus on the negatives, that wasn't the quickest lap, that he made a mistake, that it could have been better. It's like, Lando, no, everybody's different and every personality thrives off different things. Lando says that's where he gets his performance from, being so pragmatic even and so self-deprecating and so negative. But I think there are downstream ramifications that are negative for him. Surely you want to put forth into the world positivity only, even if in your mind, per Nico Rosberg, you are self-doubting, you are having these negative thought processes, you are doubting whether you're going to be able to nail it off the line tomorrow, launch and shift through the gears and maintain yourself first position. And I just wish for Lando to fulfill that gap analysis, to transition from talented driver, God tier 1, to an executioner, a dude who nails for it and can optimize for his not insubstantial potential. I just wish that Lando would be more positive. There we go. Story, and I'm sticking to it. Like the camaraderie developing between Sir Lewis and Max. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, Attic. That's all that is. You know what I mean? The enemy of my enemy will always be my friend. Lewis, Lando, and Maximilian Verstappen. Yeah, they are brothers in arms, because they all disagree with this nonsense that the FIA are choosing to get themselves wrapped up in. And it is nonsense. It is absolute nonsense, but I digress. Listen, back 30 minutes before lights out tomorrow, and it will get techie. I'm hoping that we get a blockbuster race, a gangbusters one even, just like we did last race weekend at Baku. Indeed, if tomorrow is half as entertaining as what we saw last race weekend, then all F1 fans around the world, the community, is absolutely in for a treat. When it's like this stakes, uncertainty, friction, to use the gesture of one Nico Rosberg, one-time World Drivers' Champion in 2016. When it's like that, there's no other sport like it, I'll be honest. And I will always be vouching for it, advertising for it, because it's different, unique, and I love it. But I digress. Tomorrow, 30 minutes before lights out, what are we doing?